You know what? I'm going to start actually like doing anti-sponsorships. You know how everybody does like what is it? AG1 greens or whatever. I'm just going to be like, that product sucks. And I'm just going to be anti-sponsor.
Oh.
Is that bad?
Horrible idea.
Debunk myths. I mean, I think as long as you have great lawyers, I think it's a wonderful idea.
The Hollow Bunny. And we all
Greetings and salutations, and welcome to the Hollow Bunny Leadership Podcast. I'm Kristen Zeman, and I am here with my ambitious and affectionate co-host, Sylvia.
Yes, you
Moyer.
are. Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Sylvia. Where are you in the world right now? Are you in your
I'm
office?
in
Tell us where you
Marin
are.
County, California. It's beautiful. It's stunning.
Oh, what a beautiful place. I'm in Naples, Florida with my bag packed. I've got one foot out the door and I'm heading to South Spain right after this show. So I'm just going to be a world traveler today.
And we're going to delay this because the paparazzi would find you. We're going to have to delay this
That's
till
why
you
we
get
won't
back.
drop it. Yeah. I don't want to have to wear disguises in Spain. And
No
you
bueno.
know how it is. You know how
No
it is.
bueno.
So welcome, bunnies, to our Hollow Bunny podcast. As you all know, all of our listeners, this podcast is not just for cops. It's for anyone interested in talking about life and leadership, and particularly the lessons that we have learned about both. And those lessons fill up the Hollow Bunny metaphorically. So let me tell you about our guest today. We have Scott Thuman with us. He is the main news anchor at WJLA ABC affiliate in Washington, D.C. Yeah, we've hit the big time here. We've hit the big time. Once again, canceled Oprah for Scott. So Scott,
Hi,
welcome
Oprah.
to the Hollow Bunny. Welcome to the Hollow Bunny podcast.
Thank you very much. I already got an angry text from Oprah saying, I can't believe you took my spot.
Yeah, she does that. She actually has been chastising some of our guests, the ones that we have bumped her for. But I mean, listen, she's just going to have to deal with it. She's a resilient woman.
Yeah, I think she'll rebound just fine.
Yeah, I think she's going to be okay. So, Scott, tell us what you do. First of all, thank you for being on the Hollow Bunny podcast. Yeah, and so give us a little bit of the background, your start story, and how you started in journalism. Give it all to us. We want the juice.
Well, I don't know that I want to bore your viewers so early in this podcast, but I will at least give you a Reader's Digest version. So starting out, because as you mentioned, currently, and this is a job that I just took on in January this year, at the end of January, I became the main anchor for the evening news and the late night news on ABC 7 News in Washington, D.C., the main ABC affiliate in D.C. And quite an undertaking. I had to admit, I was like, am I ready for this? But what led up to it was kind of a long trek to get here anyway. So I guess, at some point you just earn the merits. I started out, even before TV, I think I knew I had just kind of this nerdy bug, right? I was the captain of the speech and debate team in high school. So I was traveling around to tournaments and in my free time trying not to get beat up for that title. And then I would get these judges who on their critique sheets would say, some of them would actually say, have you looked into journalism or have you looked into television? And I didn't have any interest really at the time, especially for TV. But I thought about journalism because I always loved the news, watching it, kind of realizing that they were on the front lines of everything exciting, watching history in real time, being a witness to all of it, and then having the task of trying to somehow relay all that in a digestible, smart, interesting way, usually in a really compressed time frame. So I like the challenge of it, and was a bit of a history buff anyway. So fast forward, I go through high school, get into college, go through some of college. I was writing for the school paper. I was at a tiny school called Florida Southern College in Lakeland. I think there were maybe like 1,400 students, so I was real small. And then went for an internship with the NBC affiliate in West Palm Beach, Florida, WPTV. And day one, got sent out on some crazy story where it was, that a prisoner was at the hospital and got loose and was holding a nurse hostage with a scalpel, one of these, movie scenes. And so I was tailing the reporter and photographer, and I'm out there and watching them all just like quickly try and figure out a story and go on air at noon, and all of them in some tiny little penned off area, going all at once, talking over each other to their respective stations. And I thought, well, gosh, the adrenaline rush of this is so much more intense than what I thought I would do if I did print journalism. And I thought that the time crunch, the challenge, and somehow being composed just seemed like a better task, a better challenge. So pursued that. I ended up working in Jacksonville, Florida for the first 5 years out of college for the NBC affiliate there. Worked my way up from a part-time writer for the Saturday morning show. That was the only job they didn't trust me with at first. And went through the system there, eventually got on air. By the time I left, I was anchoring the show that I used to write teases for. And then I went to the ABC affiliate in Orlando, Florida. WFTV, was there for 5 years. Really got an international bug there, and a desire to cover international affairs as well as politics. But I freelanced in Iraq very briefly by myself during the war, and was in Haiti, Germany, kind of anything I could do to get out of the country and tell other stories. So did that for 5 years, and then went to JLA in Washington, D.C. in 2005 as a reporter there, became senior political reporter, covered the campaign trail, anchored for a little bit, back to campaigns, then went to the National Bureau, working for 180 TV stations as the chief political correspondent for all of those. Realized that is a drain that you can't do forever. And after, 8 plus, almost 9 years, I got this offer to go back to where it kind of started at Channel 7 in Washington, D.C. as the main evening anchor. And I've been doing that now for, a handful of months, just figuring it all out.
Wow. Okay. So I've got, I think about 97 questions, but I'll just
Perfect.
So what a fascinating story about how you arrived. I guess I have to start with this kind of concept in journalism about trust, to be trusted, trusting, and trustworthy, as our former guest, Sunny Lee, talked about. I mean, that's a big, big deal. You're going into people's homes. You are gathering facts and telling stories, and you are reporting news. But if you're not trusted, then it's not going to resonate with folks. What do you say about that? Because that seems to be a really important piece. That coupled with having excruciatingly good relationship with the truth and having integrity. What do you say about that stuff?
I think that's our hardest hurdle these days. And I didn't feel that way 15, 20 years ago because it was a much different viewpoint when people talked about journalism, when they talked about the news and who they could trust. And I think these days, trying to convince people that you are simply doing the right thing, that you've not chosen a side, you haven't taken a position, that you're basically, as the old just the facts, right? If we're going to go cops on this thing for a little bit.
Very resonant.
If you wanted to say that's all we're doing, it was a more, people leaned into that and they believed in it. And these days, because anyone who's a keyboard warrior in the basement says, I'm a journalist, and they purport whatever they believe the truth to be, or maybe they don't believe it, but they put it out there, it clearly has eroded what's going on. And with the political tenor, which is great to escape, and glad I'm not working on the Hill anymore or with the White House anymore, but because of the kind of toxic political atmosphere right now, people also want to attack every news organization, however steadfast they may be in the truth. And so, 15 years ago, you just went out and you did your job, and most people said, okay, well, this is a report of the facts today. They're giving me all sorts of insight I didn't have this morning. They're making me aware of everything from the job fair in town to the triple murder around the corner, whatever it may be, things that I need to know about my community. And so we felt like we were in a really good place. And now you're constantly defending yourself and trying to convince your audience, hey, you can trust me. I'm a decent human being without an ulterior motive. And I'm trying to provide a service. I mean, the fourth estate, right? The fourth estate, it's a service for our people. So anyway, it is a big challenge. And I think that's what you're going to see news continue to try and evolve around that task and see what we can do to hold on to viewers, because everyone says they're a journalist these days, whether or not they've got any of the training, the credentials, or the intent, the proper intent.
Yeah, well, and I think that's part of, where we are right now is the fact that everything seems to be so pundit and opinion laced. And I crave the days where you fed me the factual information and I then was left to devise my own opinion about that. And I really do think the best journalists strive to do that, to maintain that neutrality and really let individuals decide. But I want to go backwards in time just a little bit because you glazed over an illustrious career. And there's a few things in there that I want to pull out from there. Number one, you made the comment, I wasn't really ready. And I think so many people need to hear that because you're never really ready for the next big thing that you are about to embark upon, whether you pursue it or whether someone taps you on the shoulder. That's the notion of getting ready. So you mentioned that, but go backwards and tell me, you describe a lot of the grunt work in journalism and media where you're going to, international, just countries and you're reporting from the field. And then what does it take then to get a coveted position of anchor? What happens in the middle of that to catapult you into that particular place and time?
Well, I think that you touched on something important, that we all have an insecurity, especially when it comes to your career. There can be moments where you doubt whether or not you match up to what people's expectations or impression of you are, right? So for me, I don't know that it became much of a reality until I saw a promo as they were kind of unveiling that I was the new anchor. And they had this promo that they were running on air. And it was something about, this is the guy who's done it all that you can trust. And they were showing me all over the world. They were showing me, in a trench in Ukraine with a flak jacket and a helmet. And they were showing me walking, along the Darien Gap, the jungle in Panama, or whatever it may be. And it was when I looked at it and went, oh, I guess I have done some things. Maybe I do know more than the average bear. And I guess I have been in the industry almost 30 years. And you just kind of forget that because you always think, especially in a place like DC, right? What's interesting about DC, it's fascinating, is you're never the smartest person in the room. It doesn't matter how bright you may think you aren't, right? You walk in and someone else is a former diplomat, an ambassador, somebody who ran NSA, a Supreme Court justice brother, whatever it may be. They're all there and they're all brilliant, and it can bring you to the table for some humble pie pretty quickly. And I think that's a great thing. But it's also why then, at least in my case, I did kind of doubt myself. Like, I don't know, am I ready to be the main anchor in DC? Like that's a story job. Those were like the Gordon Petersons and the Leon Harrises of the world and the Maureen Bunyans, these like story characters who are, well known for a million years in this market. But then somebody says, oh, this was the best decision they could have made. Look at how much you bring to the table. And then you have to be willing and okay with accepting that, all right, maybe I'm not so terrible. And it seems counterintuitive, right? Because we TV people, we're known for our vanity and our ego, right? So to be a little insecure about it, it's kind of ironic. But I think that, working my way up, as you pointed out, Kristen, spending time in a place like Jacksonville, Florida, and trying to cut my teeth and learn to report, and then going to Orlando and deciding, I'm gonna take risks. I'm going to, when I was there and I wanted to cover the war, and I was monitoring a lot of the military readiness as they were getting ready for the invasion of Iraq in 2003. And so I was at Fort Benning and Stewart and covering them. I was at Parris Island, seeing everyone gear up. And I said, well, I want to go in, tip of the spear. I want to be in with them and cover the actual first bits in Iraq. And then the company said that I was working for at the time said, no, we don't know if there's NBC, nuclear, biological, chemical. We're not going to send you in there. Too dangerous. You're not going. So I was frustrated. I found another way in maybe a month or so later. They said, nope, you're not going. Finally, I said, well, you know what? I got 3 weeks vacation. I'll see you guys later. And I got a helmet, a vest, and a small camera. And I just went by myself. One of the dumbest things you can do, of course. Yeah.
That's brilliant dumb. That's like, that
Hold on.
predator dumb. But
yes,
brilliant.
because hold on, so I love that because you took your career into your own hands. And instead of waiting, and we often hear is like, oh, my organization won't send me to this training. They're holding me back from this. And you took matters into your own hands. And that to me is the key to all of our careers. We are in the driver's seat of our careers. So kudos to you for stepping on the accelerator there. Carry on.
Well, I mean, I guess it's just part of the larger thread, right? And by the way, Sylvia, you are much younger than my mom, but you sounded very much like my mom there, telling me how dumb I was, which I've gotten dissertations on from her over the years for all the idiotic things I've done in furtherance of a career, but not just because I was like, oh, this will guarantee success or fame or fortune, because none of those things have come from it. It's all just been an ingredient in this like crazy concoction I've been cooking up, right? It was like, how do I become a better journalist? How do I really understand what's happening around the world? Well, you got to go. You have to go see these things for yourself. And so, I've been fortunate enough that I didn't typically have to go on my own dime or vacation to tackle some of these larger assignments. At some point, companies said, oh, this is the guy, we can send him. And that's why I've been lucky enough to go to cover the war in Ukraine, or whether it was, money laundering in Paraguay for Hezbollah, or whether it was, the difficulties of being a journalist in Moscow, or I don't know. I mean, U.S. trade in Vietnam. I mean, they've been good enough to send me all over the world. Beirut. Anyway, the point, you get the point. We had a really fun story on the smuggling routes in Tunisia along the Libyan border. I mean, I think I've had bosses who believed that I'll come back with a good story, and none of those have meant I'm anchoring NBC Nightly News. I mean, I'm not kicking Lester Holt out of his seat by any stretch of the imagination, but it led me to where I am now, and I think that it's a good place to be for someone like me.
Okay, so let's hear the shout out to Lester Holt from Sac State. Come on. Okay, so wow, Scott, I don't mind sounding like your mama. In fact, I want to have lunch with her. Here's the thing: the parallels are mind blowing to me. As cops, we're in the trenches. We do the thing. We take the assignment nobody else wants. Most of us, when we were in training on our days off, we were on our time off, driving our own cars, learning the streets, dispatching ourselves on fake calls for service to find our way, to do what we had to do, to prove we had the grit, the desire, the chutzpah to just get it done. And the parallels of being in the trenches and this path to now sitting in like the premier seat with air conditioning in a bathroom and you underwear. I'm guessing you wear underwear. I mean, you didn't wear that in Tunisia. I'm just saying, but Scott,
I mean, it's hot there.
Like, right. You're living large. I can't help but think that that's this gritty, amazing path that has texture that leads you to this place of humility and presence that is an earned kind of thing. And I don't even have a damn question. I just want to just say that's remarkable.
I do because you mentioned grit. I mean, and that's what it is. It's getting out there and doing the thing and getting yourself closer to the goal that you want to fulfill. But now we've mentioned your mom twice in here, and I want to know your backstory, and I want to know about your parents and how their stories shaped you. Your mom is obviously an influence in your life. So tell us about how they play the part into who you are today.
Yeah, they're the real story. You're going to kick me off in about 4 minutes and hit them up because they have the backstory that will intrigue anyone. In fact, anytime I've told anyone about my family, they go, "When is the book coming out?" So I'll try and speed through this a little bit. But my parents are both just the most fantastic people. I know people say that, but man, I mean it. They're just wonderful. I'm so lucky to have them, and my brother as well. So it's the four of us. And my father, here's the crazy one. So my father grew up outside of Buffalo, New York, Cheektowaga, talking in the 40s. He's an altar boy, and he decides he wants to be a priest one day. So he joins seminary. He's a monk. 10 years, he's a monk, okay? Now, at the same time, my mom grows up Cincinnati, Ohio, Irish, Catholic, wants to be a nun. So she leaves home at 15, I believe. It was 15 or 16. I think it was 15. Leaves home, goes to the convent. She becomes a nun. She's in 11 years. And everyone wants the scandal, which is that they somehow met in the church and ran off together. That part is, unfortunately for soap opera fans, not accurate. But they both separately decide. My father, days before becoming ordained as a priest, has these doubts. He's a very modest, quiet guy, and he had some doubts. And they go, well, that's why you take a sabbatical. You need to go think about it. So he does. Eventually, he decides, you know what? I want to pursue a life outside of the church thing. You've been great. Go with God. It's great. My mom, same time, she made this decision when she was 15, right? Like, who knows if you're going to stick with that for the rest of your life? She wants to have a family. She expresses those concerns. They go, okay, it's fine. So she leaves. They both leave. They both end up coincidentally at the same time in Florida. And my mom was teaching down there. She was a teacher as a nun, so she's teaching outside of the church as well. And my father was working for the state of Florida in a government position. Anyway, they ended up meeting through a church group. Shocking. And
Not a
get
surprise.
together.
I wasn't thinking, no.
Right.
So not on Tinder
Right.
or
It wasn't at a monster truck rally. No.
Priestneedwives.com. Yeah, okay.
They hadn't both joined the Hells Angels and like
Fully patched. Okay, got it.
Real confused. So then my dad decides the natural progression from a monk, obviously, is to become a special agent in the FBI.
No,
Yes.
sir. No,
Yes.
Obviously.
no, sir.
That's the
Fact checker, aisle 7.
I know. We need a team. Hold on. Wait, does our legal team do fact checks, or is that a whole other team?
People. Get those PhD people in here. Come on. What?
I need to hit the button.
Okay, is this why the FBI stands for friggin' bad idea? What's happening?
No comment.
Okay, I'm going to stop. This is riveting.
Well, this is old school, right? We're talking 1970s, early 70s. He joins the Bureau. So he joins the Bureau, becomes a special agent, works all over. My mother continues to teach public school, private school, back and forth. She's teaching Latin, English, social studies, all the things. And then they have my brother, who's 2 years older than me. He's a fascinating tale in his own right because he's super talented, really smart guy. But he changes majors, I think, 4 times in college, was in as a theater major, and then instantly changes to like, whatever, who knows. Anyway, he graduates somehow on time, and then he becomes, he joins the Army. He wasn't ROTC. He doesn't go at officer training. He just joins as a grunt. They test him. They're like, you're smarter than, the average. So they sent him off to the Presidio to learn, or to DLI, I'm sorry, Defense Language Institute.
Monterey.
Becomes fluent becomes fluent in Arabic.
Oh my God.
And then Fort Huachuca becomes an interrogator. He's overseas. So yeah, the whole family. It's just bizarre.
Suck it. She's out. Keep talking, Scott.
That's right. Yeah, Oprah. You know what? We're not even calling her back. Honestly, our guests are even better.
Move on.
Oh my God.
Okay, Scott.
Okay.
God,
All right, keep going.
I'm
Your
so
family.
excited.
Keep going.
Yeah. So I'll wrap it up for you.
No.
But basically, my dad puts in this amazing career with the Bureau. When he retires, I believe he was the oldest FBI agent in the country because, mandatory retirement is, at least it was then, I think it still is, 57 maybe for an agent. So anyway, he got extended 3 separate times. So he had 3 1-year extensions. So he retired at 60 as a special agent, which is pretty rare. I'm sure it happens, but rare. And then my mom and he retired out west, out in Scottsdale, Arizona, but then eventually they ended up in Santa Fe. They're there full time now in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And the guy's amazing. He's 84? He still walks like 7 miles every morning. He's a champion. He's sharp as a tack. He and my mom just like read books all day and take walks and volunteer. They were docents at the cathedral. They still have that religious tie, so they give tours down at the church. Yeah, they're just wonderful people.
Can you introduce us to their publicists?
I told
wonder
you
if
you'd
we
want
could
them.
maybe book them. Yeah, that's absolutely remarkable.
So one day there will be a book on someone's shelf, hopefully, that's called The Monk, the Nun, and the Interrogator. And the subtitle is And the Lessons They Taught Me. So that's the book that I've very slowly been working on for way too long.
Oh Oh my gosh, from the church to the FBI, from musical theater to, yeah, I mean, all of this is
Well,
just
and then then my
the
brother became an
craziest ride.
FBI agent, and he became
No.
a CT agent for the FBI for years. He was on the original fly team after 9/11 that they created. And so he was on the fly team for years, and then was working at the undisclosed locations around DC to help run terrorism
Sure.
cases. And he just got out of the bureau a year or so ago, and he's in the private sector now. But he did 20 plus years in the bureau, so all counterterrorism. In fact, when I was in Iraq, we met. He was there for CT work, and I was there covering the war. And we met, and we had beers on the roof of, I think it was either Uday or Hussein's old home that the bureau had taken over,
Love that.
and watched the mortars fly over and had a beer, and it was great. It was
I
one of the
hope
best
you took a
experiences of my
picture
life.
of that. I hope you took a picture of that moment, and I hope you have that on a canvas in your house, because you must.
Oh my God.
But there, what's so interesting here is, though, it seems, and you've been on kind of, the trajectory with the debate team and, going to journalism, something you've always wanted to do. But what's so interesting to me is, despite, the FBI with your dad and your brother, is that, it's seemingly a very different track, but the same principles and values are there. And honestly, what that is to me is truth seekers. You are in search of the truth in your profession, and they are in search of the truth, and that's what law enforcement is. And it's so interesting to me when we have this juxtaposition of media and police and not getting along, when really we have the same end in mind. So talk a little bit about that. What's conversation like at the dinner table with your family, and talking about these high level truth seekers, as Sil said, where both professions demand trust of a community, of a nation. Big stuff.
Well, it is. I unfortunately, the dinner table was a very quiet one, because to their credit, both my father and then eventually my brother, they wouldn't talk about their jobs. They're not one of these people who, and that's a compliment, but because you do see people, especially in this city, which kind of drives you nuts or gives you a little bit of an eye roll sometimes, who can't wait to tell you how important they are. And there'll be people wearing like they'll be at a Christmas party and they're wearing a polo like this, but with the big FBI logo on it, right? You're like, hey man, it's a Christmas party. Relax.
That's
so
our
they,
profession. Totally. Yeah.
So they wouldn't talk about it. My dad would be like, what are you doing? Paperwork. And he's like putting on a vest to go out,
Yeah.
And my brother never really said a word about his time. So, there weren't great stories other than the ones I would get from their friends, who would sometimes, spill the goods and tell me some crazy story about when they were in Afghanistan, what happened, or who knows what. But you know what, to the end point, regardless of what the substance was in the conversations, what I took from my family was that it's all about merit. It's all about just doing the work. And you know what? You may get elevated, you may get promoted, you may get a raise, you may get noticed, you may not. But you don't need to be the squeaky wheel. And there's nothing wrong with being a squeaky wheel. I get it. Sometimes you have to draw attention. You have to say to your boss, this is important, pay attention, focus on what I'm bringing to the table and why it matters. And I deserve a bite at the apple for some other challenge. But we've just always been of the ilk that if you just put in the work and you bust your ass and you do it the right way, it will be noticed and valued and rewarded in the way that you feel rewarded, whether that's through, getting to go on some cool assignment around the world, or some, task that you were envious that another reporter or FBI agent or teacher had. You'll get that.
You just get shit done. You pursue it. I got to ask, there's a lot out in the environment that says, hey, a journalist will get a story and be super excited. They'll conduct the requisite research. Then you pitch it to your boss. Have you ever had one that is so interesting, so insightful, so exhilarating, and you have so much research and they're like, yeah, no.
Yeah, it happens all the time. One of my other jobs is I'm a correspondent for a show called Full Measure with Sharyl Attkisson. And it's a national show. It's kind of one of these Sunday morning shows that's almost like a 60 Minutes junior,
Okay.
right? It's like a baby 60 Minutes. So we do long format pieces. And that's where I've done most of my international travel and kind of larger assignments. And there are plenty of pieces that my producer, Mark, who's just one of the sharpest guys, and he and I will come up with an idea and we'll pitch it, and it'll get just a big old eye roll or a no way and kind of a gruff pass. But they've also been times where we just pitch it over and over and over until it happens, or go even higher. You know, I mean, I've gone to the big boss of the company before and said, "Hey, man, you know what? The spread of Chinese entrepreneurship and Chinese business and Belt and Road Initiative that we're seeing not in Africa anymore, but now in South America, much closer to the U.S., it's colossal." And he says, "Well, you got to go do that story." So that other bosses go, "All right, fine, go do it." You know, so every once in a while you go to the big guy, but for the most part, I have a really great system, including the executive producer and the host, who support most of these crazy pitches. And if we say, "Hey, we want to go to Alaska because Russia's got more ice cutters than America does, we need to see what's happening in the Arctic," they go, "All right, go."
Okay, so to Syl's point on that, is there a time, the way that I see it is that you have to have your eyes open to the world in full consciousness all the time,
Right.
not only for the stories that you have to report, but constantly open to, okay, what is the next big story? So when you wake up in the morning, and the reason that I ask this is because I've come to a time in my life where I've stopped ingesting content first thing in the morning. I'm a news junkie, and the first thing I grab my coffee and watch the news, and I've stopped doing that because I absolutely, I make my bed first, cold plunge, make my bed. I have a morning routine. But I used to ingest all of the news, and I found that it was putting me just in a place, of negativity. It's the first thing that you hear in the morning. It's not usually, "Hey guys, the world is great. No one's fighting and we're all getting along." Instead, it's just constant. So is this and I'm paralleling this to the state of a police officer, is that we're always in condition yellow. It's like we walk around the world and we have to be alert even when we're off duty. And I imagine it's the same for you. When you wake up in the morning, is the first thing that you do to ingest, because you have to produce and you have to find the next story. So is that what your life is like? And if so, where's the quiet for you? What do you do when you're not working and when you're not consuming all of this information that the world is throwing at you?
Well, the first part of the answer is I've scaled back from that. Especially when I was the chief political correspondent. I mean, I ate, breathed, slept everything that was going on with the White House and Capitol Hill, to the point that you didn't sleep very much, right? And especially in the early Trump years, where, a 2 a.m. tweet was national or international news. It had implications sometimes. And so we all slept with our notifications off, and that meant the phone was buzzing all the time. And you had to jump into action because you didn't know what the repercussions of a statement or, a position may be. So I did start my day consuming constant news and throughout the day, and then ended it that way as well. Things have calmed down a little bit politically, although they're still pretty, we're in a tempest all the time now, but it changes, right? There's ebb and flow to it.
Scott calls this calm. This is his calm right now.
Right. It actually is, right?
The nation is calm right now.
Yes, this is a calm state.
Oh,
yeah,
God,
we can all hit the cruise control and snooze button. No, I used to be that way, but I've also told my parents, who are my greatest supporters. I've told my mom, like, "Hey, you can't consume news all the time because it is toxic these days. It is difficult." Now, what I've done that I think is helpful is with our newscasts, especially like the 6 and 11 o'clock news, I make sure we put a lot of light news in there too, because nobody wants 90 minutes of death and destruction. They don't. Now, the opposite isn't true either, because there have been tests over the years where newsrooms have tried to adapt to what people say they want. And they go, "Hey, man, I just want, kittens and rainbows." And you give them 90 minutes of kittens and rainbows, and you know what? Nobody watches that either. So you have to find a middle ground. And we've worked really hard at my station of trying to blend in those lighter moments, memorable moments, something good, something happy, positivity in the world. So I let that reflect how I live myself, my life as well, right? I don't consume news at the pace I used to. Fortunately, I have a great team around me that, we're almost like taking shifts of who has to pay attention to some degree. And that all pans out pretty well. How I calm down these days, I got married in January this year, and I
married and promoted,
this,
huh?
I know. Married, promoted, moved. I mean, everything happened at
Bravo.
once. Blending of of families. When I say families, I mean blending of 4 dogs, which in its own right could drive you to the loony bin. I'm halfway there. I do have a 16-year-old Chihuahua laying next to me right now, within arm's reach. But that's Olive. She's amazing. But point being, getting married and having this wonderful partner who literally can see me getting worked up and see the stress kind of pouring out of me, and will come over and grab me by the arm and say, calm down. It's okay. Take a breath. And I have been independent and single for so long, for about a decade plus, and I had forgotten how valuable having a partner is in that respect. I've always had great friends, but having that person, it makes you realize that, hey, you can't be Superman every minute of the day, and nor should you ever try. It's ridiculous. And it's okay to take that breath. And I was really failing at it. I mean, I really, the anxiety and the tension and the workload and the kind of self-destructive behavior that comes with just that. I don't mean drinking or eating or doing drugs. I just mean the work, right? That alone can just take you.
It's a different kind of addiction
in a dark place. And thank God for my wife Bear, because her name's Erin, but she goes by Bear. It's a nickname. But thank God for Bear, because it's she, along with a couple of my best friends, my producer, who do bring me back down to earth when they see I'm just way too spun up on the news.
So you call her Bear?
Talk about
Bear like Grizzly?
Yeah.
Did you meet
exactly?
Bear
but
on
hopefully
an
more like a
airplane?
Teddy.
Did you meet Bear on Southwest? I'm just wondering.
I did not.
Oh.
Should I have?
I don't know. There's all kinds of people we meet on airplanes. Kristen and I.
Well, Sylvia, that sounded
Is there a
autobiographical.
backstory here?
That's a whole other
Get it,
podcast,
ladies.
isn't that,
Well, you know what,
Sylvia?
Scott? That is remarkable.
For the late
and
night
that is a really
podcast.
important thread to tug on. And because it leads right into my question. I mean, human touch and connection is so necessary. Really, my question is about, we're grappling in this time and space where we don't just have partisan where we disagree on policies, right? It's like, you're an asshole. It's gone to character attack, which is really weird. It's gone to journalists are assholes. Journalists are liars. Cops are racist. It's become this just really gross kind of space. And I guess the question is really around, with all the acute and cumulative toxicity and trauma that you witnessed firsthand, that cops, that nurses, that journalists witnessed firsthand, what did you do for you? And I'm going to pause there for a second and say, it sounds just delightfully like you have this spiritual self with your parents and your family and that core values of your people that may have you have some natural resilience. But I want to ask, like, what do you do with all of that stuff so it doesn't degrade that beautiful soul of yours?
I don't know. I mean, look, I've always been an outdoor person. So
is Kristen.
To me, some of my greatest moments. The sarcasm drips so deep here.
So yes,
my greatest kind of endeavors or adventures are the ones that I know you always say, what fills your bunny. For me, it had been, until I've now found this life with someone else, but it had been just getting as far away from civilization as possible, right? It's like going to the Amazon, trekking. Last year I trekked to Everest Base Camp and did, parts of the Himalayas. Years before I did Kilimanjaro, like just getting somewhere where your phone doesn't work, where there's not electricity, where there's just nature. And I'm not like, look, don't get me wrong, I love plugging electricity. I'm not someone who wants to live,
a hairdryer,
in a tent.
Sounds so savage.
Wow. So that was for me always my way to cleanse, right? I mean, that was one of the things I would do right after an inauguration, is I scheduled that. There'd be a presidential campaign, all the horrible stuff that comes with that, just taxing, the election night,
brilliant,
and then inauguration, and then I go, I'm out of here, guys. And the bosses were great, and I would leave for a few weeks, 2+ weeks, and I would go as far from humanity as I could.
Yeah.
But these days I live out in the woods. I mean, I moved from Alexandria, which and then to now where my wife was living. So I'm out in Great Falls in the woods, like woods, right? It's like every day, what animal is going to wake me up at 3 a.m? And it's great because it's just relaxing. And today was out there, she was mowing the lawn and I was like trimming trees for an hour this morning. And it's wonderful.
And that's your center. And you did say a couple of things, and one of which I don't want to overlook, and that is, the importance of having a team of people around you. You mentioned your wife and your very close friends. I call them my front row, and it's important to have these truth tellers around you, the ones that can look at you and say, hey, pull back a little bit here. I can see you're getting stressed out. And, and I always tell people the most important business decision that you can make in your life is who you choose as a life partner. And that extends to who you surround yourself with. And not only that, but this idea of nature and of quiet time. And for those people who are not outdoorsy, perhaps like me, who love 5-star hotels.
You're a city.
Yes, I'm a city girl. But what Scott is saying really resonates, because it's like I've always loved that time before dawn. So because no one is around to tell me who to be, so I remember exactly who I am. And that's the quiet time, whether that is in nature or whether that's in stillness, but that gets our center just right. So that's a great place, in the hustle and bustle of, the media world and journalism and constantly chasing the next big breaking story. It's so important, regardless of whether you're doing that or you're just grinding at whatever you do every day in life, being a great parent and, being, great in your career. You have to take that time for yourself and surround yourself with people. And I think that is a really great place to land the plane right here. So thank you very much for joining us today and for dropping these nuggets of wisdom to all of our bunnies.
Yeah. Scott, seems like you've lived several lives in this one life of yours. So what fills your bunny? What are you going to leave us with that fills your bunny?
I think I kind of gave up the goods on that already, but I will revert to this because I know that you this is your token question, and I've listened to your podcast. I know that you go for this one. I know it's your tell. I'm not a big bed maker. I'm not. I get out.
Everything was going so good.
And now all the respect for me is gone, right?
The pedestal.
Right? You were like, this guy.
Do we need to call medic?
This guy.
Medic. Falling off the pedestal?
Now, my wife likes the bedmates, so I partake, I humor. But is it a desire of mine?
So you married up.
I married up for sure. But I'm also not I've never drank coffee. I'm not a coffee guy. So I get up and I just go.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, so I think that's my dad. My dad, the former monkey, led this very pure life. I don't think I've ever seen him have more than 3 drinks. So I like. And so, cumulative. And so for me, it's just as soon as I get up, I'm just let's tackle the day. And even when I used to anchor the morning show, and I'd get up at 2:30 in the morning, I don't drink coffee. I wouldn't make the bed. I admit I wouldn't, but I also just I don't know. I don't need to. I just feel like I can start the day. Let's plow through.
Sylvia, do you think we're too judgy? Do you think we need to relax our judgment? Okay, I don't think so either. I think, you know what? It's a wonder.
Scott's yum. I'm not.
You know what, Scott? I can't even imagine what your resume would look like if you made your bed.
Yeah, you could have made.
What a slacker! Honestly,
how many Nobel Prizes have I missed out on?
You could have gone the top of Everest, but no.
You would be in Lester Holt's chair if you would just make your frickin' bed.
Rancho Cordova, Sacramento. Don't go bashing old Lester. But Scott, I have to say, we've had some pretty remarkable guests on this podcast. I'm thinking that our fan base and Kristen and I are going to want Scott Thuman 2.0 because I want to hear more about you. I think you've got just a remarkable story to tell. And this has been an absolute delight.
Well, I do want to add one thing about, and this is clearly not the part of the show where we go, you're great, I love you. But I do want to say in all sincerity, coming from a law enforcement family, I think that, I have the utmost respect for what law enforcement officers do. I always say when it comes to media, because we love ourselves in the media, and I always go, hey, man, when I see somebody who's out of control, I go, we're not cops, we're not firefighters, we're not doctors, and we're not soldiers. So take a breath, right? Those are the esteemed ones who put themselves out there in ways that we don't. and who save lives and keep us safe and cure us when we're ill. And that's who we need to compare ourselves to when we get too out of control with our own egos. But I hope that you reference the fact that it's a tough job, more than maybe ever, to be a police officer or a law enforcement officer these days. And it's so unfortunate to see. And I really hope, just as I do hope with journalism, that everyone at some point does take a breath. We get back to the place where people recognize and respect the places that we're coming from and what our goals are and what we really want to provide people.
Right.
And if we're doing it without motivation, without ill intent, if we're just doing it to be the pure position that we've chosen in life, then we can all kind of wrap our arms around it in a really positive way.
That's awesome. Democracy dies in darkness, right? And Plato was known to have said, if the Masons and the cobblers fail, that's one thing. But if the guardians fail, democracy crumbles. So the work that you do, the work that we do in policing, it's about democracy and advancing democracy and safeguarding people. Thanks so much,
right.
Scott.
Truth telling.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you. Sylvia, I propose, I've been inspired by Scott. I think you and I should take the field. I think we should get on some gear and maybe show up in New Mexico, and just start interviewing people for our podcast, like maybe, I don't know, Scott's parents. Yes. But what do you say we go on location? Yes. I mean, we'll gear up. We could do it. We could do. That's what I'm proposing. That let's tell our producer that, or maybe we should make decisions when he's not here. Speaking of that, thank you everyone. Thank you all of the bunnies that joined us today. Ted Madden produces this podcast, and the song you are about to hear was written and performed exclusively for our little podcast by my handsome and talented son, Jacob Zeman, and his accomplished friends, Fabian and Zoe. If you like our podcast, please subscribe, like, review, and tell everyone you know about it. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, or X, or whatever the hell we're calling it these days. If you don't like the podcast, move along. There's nothing more to see here. Keep filling your own bunnies and keep adding substance to others. Bye, everybody.
What do you find? Are you content to fall behind when you lose your way and you fall? So why have courage and get ready to fight the hollow bunny? When the way ahead is covered in smoke and you're tired and scared and you're losing hope, you'll open your heart and your eyes to see a challenge and a question. Why not me? To fight the hollow bunny. And we all feel hollow sometimes, but the monsters are only in your mind. It's a tough pill to swallow, but if you're brave and kind, you'll be alright. If you fight tame the imposter inside instead. To change the world, you've got to start small. It takes a leader to say, I don't know it all, and I know I'm gonna fall, but I'll pick it up and come back stronger, failing forward and moving onward, doing the hard thing and the right thing, forever fighting the hollow bunny. And we all feel hollow sometimes, but the monsters are only in your mind. It's a tough pill to swallow, but if you're brave and kind, you'll be alright. If you fight the hollow bunny. But empty within, something's gonna crack, you've gotta start again. And we all tough on the outside, but empty within, something's gonna crack, you've gotta start again. The monster